The garage erupts in silence. Verstappen steps out of the RB21, the car still humming as if alive. The data engineers freeze. The numbers are unreal. The car didn't just perform, it evolved. Makey stares at the telemetry. This isn't in the model, he mutters. He's made the car faster than the simulation. Verstappen removes his gloves, calm as ever. It's the air, he says. I finally understand how to use it. The new Red Bull under Laurent Mekies had come to Mexico carrying questions. For new aerodynamic parts, a redesigned floor, reprofiled edges, new cooling vents, and revised brake ducts, all experimental, all risky. The engineers expected turbulence, instability, maybe chaos. What they didn't expect was harmony. The moment Verstappen rolled out of the pit lane, you could see it. His steering movements were slower, calmer, deliberate. He wasn't wrestling the car, he was reading it, measuring how the altitude pressed against its surfaces. By the time he hit turn 3, he'd already learned what the wind tunnel couldn't teach. 3 laps later, the stopwatch confirmed the feeling. 1 minute, 17.392 seconds. Fastest by a margin that bordered on disrespectful. But Verstappen didn't celebrate. Inside the cockpit, his hands barely moved, his breathing steady. He was still listening not to the crowd, but to the rhythm of air sliding beneath the new floor. While others fought the altitude, he turned it into a weapon. For the engineers in the garage, watching the telemetry fill with impossible numbers, it was like seeing physics bend. Laurent Mekies leaned over the lead aerodynamicist. "Run the overlay," he said. The data flashed across the screen. Verstappen's lap compared to the simulation. The simulation showed instability through the fast S's, Verstappen's line showed a perfect flow of downforce. The car wasn't just surviving Mexico, it was thriving in it. "He's doing something to the air," one engineer murmured. "He's delaying it, controlling it." Mekies nodded slowly, eyes narrowing. "He's using altitude as part of the car." By the time the cars rolled into the Red Bull garage on Friday afternoon, the mood was uneasy. The RB21 had arrived in Mexico carrying more unknowns than answers. The new upgrade package, a completely reimagined floor, fresh cooling architecture, and redesigned edge wings, was a gamble born from necessity. At this altitude, even the smallest aerodynamic misstep could turn a dominant car into a liability. The engineers had warned Laurent Mekies, "The numbers look promising in the tunnel, but we've never tested this in air this thin." It wasn't reassurance. It was a warning wrapped in optimism. The problem was simple and cruel. At 2,200 meters above sea level, the air density drops by more than 20%. That means less drag, yes, but far less downforce. The ground effect systems that make modern Formula One cars stick to the road rely on dense air flowing under the floor. Here in Mexico, that air behaves like smoke. It detaches, swirls, loses grip on the carbon tunnels. For most teams, it's a weekend of damage limitation. For Red Bull, it was supposed to be a test of whether their new concept could survive. Max Verstappen didn't see it that way. From the moment he put on his gloves, the fear that echoed through the garage didn't reach him. For him, instability isn't danger, it's information. He can feel in half a lap what takes engineers an hour to translate. While the team fretted about temperatures and pressure maps, Verstappen focused on rhythm. "Let me feel it first," he said over the radio before the run. That phrase has become his trademark, the line between calculation and intuition. His first laps were exploratory, methodical. The RB21 twitched on corner exit, its rear end floating unpredictably. Most drivers would call it unmanageable. Verstappen didn't flinch. He adjusted not with overcorrection, but with patience. Tiny lifts on throttle, millimetric steering tweaks, shifts in brake modulation. Lap by lap, he began syncing himself to the car's pulse. By the 5th lap, the telemetry showed something none of the engineers expected: stability. The airflow beneath the car, chaotic in every simulation, was evening out. In the Red Bull control room, the reaction was immediate. "He's stabilizing it manually," one aerodynamicist said. "He's changing the car's behavior just through timing." Mekies leaned in. You're telling me he's correcting airflow? The engineer nodded. Exactly that. He's counteracting the stall before it happens. It sounded impossible, but the data didn't lie. Verstappen was anticipating the aerodynamic loss before the car registered it. He wasn't driving on instinct alone, he was preempting physics. The engineers looked closer. In every high-speed corner, Verstappen was altering his steering phase by milliseconds, holding off turn-in just long enough for the airflow under the new floor to reattach. The result? Downforce that the car shouldn't have had at this altitude. Mekies stood silent, realizing what he was witnessing wasn't setup refinement. It was human adaptation, a driver rewriting the limits of a machine in real time. He's treating the air like it's part of the car, one mechanic whispered. He's using it. When Verstappen came back into the garage, the team expected the usual technical jargon. Instead, he removed his gloves slowly and said, "The car's not wrong. It just needs space to breathe." The sentence sounded almost philosophical, but Mekies understood. The RB21 wasn't broken. It was misunderstood. The problem wasn't mechanical, it was human perception. Everyone else had been fighting the altitude. Verstappen had learned to flow with it. When FP2 ended, the usual rush of noise in the Red Bull garage never came. No applause, no laughter, not even relief. Only quiet. The engineers sat frozen, eyes locked on screens, watching the telemetry rewrite everything they thought they knew about the RB21. The data was perfect, too perfect. The aerodynamic load distribution looked cleaner than any simulation, the floor pressure graphs were symmetrical, and the energy recovery system was operating with mathematical precision. But that wasn't supposed to be possible. Not at this altitude. Not on a track where the air behaves like a liquid. Laurent Mekies stood in the center of the room, still in his team jacket, hands clasped behind his back. "Run it again," he said softly. The room obeyed. The screen replayed Verstappen's lap, his inputs aligned with telemetry in real time. The steering wheel movements were impossibly smooth. The brake modulation matched the car's dynamic load perfectly. Every reaction was preemptive, every motion already anticipating the turbulence that physics said should be unavoidable. "He's doing something we didn't teach the car," murmured one of the senior aerodynamicists. Mekies tilted his head, half smiling. "No," he said. "He's teaching it himself." They loaded comparative overlays. Verstappen versus Leclerc. Verstappen versus Norris. The difference was staggering. Max's lap variance, the measure of how consistently a driver maintains aerodynamic balance, was less than 0.05%. Even more extraordinary, the car's energy regeneration curve was almost completely linear, as though the MGUK and throttle response were communicating in one continuous language. But the system hadn't been updated. It hadn't changed. The difference was human. Verstappen had adjusted his rhythm to make the car's hybrid system breathe with him. When he finally entered the debrief room, the energy shifted. Verstappen didn't swagger, he didn't even smile. He moved like someone who just solved a puzzle and wanted to see if anyone else could explain why it worked. Mekies gestured to the big screen. "Look at this," he said. "It's perfect. But it shouldn't be." Max looked at the data for a few seconds, then spoke in his usual clipped, matter-of-fact tone. "It's not perfect," he said. "It's just calm. You have to let the air flow back before you load it again. The car doesn't want to be forced here. You push it too early, it panics. You wait a heartbeat, it rewards you." The engineers stared at him, then back at the telemetry. What he'd described waiting a heartbeat was exactly the timing difference they saw in the data. Verstappen was delaying his corner entry by fractions of a second, giving the airflow under the new floor time to stabilize before applying lateral load. It was an instinct no simulator could replicate, because it wasn't based on numbers. It was based on feel, the kind of sensitivity that separates champions from algorithms. "So," Mekies said slowly, "you let the floor find you before you use it." Verstappen nodded once. "Exactly. It's like music. You don't rush the rhythm. In that single exchange, months of simulation work were rendered obsolete. The engineers had spent hundreds of hours modeling pressure gradients, looking for ways to artificially stabilize the airflow. Verstappen had done it naturally, with nothing but intuition and repetition. Makis couldn't help but laugh. "You realize, Max," he said, "that you've just fixed $1 million problem with half a second of patience." Verstappen shrugged, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "It's not patience," he said. "It's listening. The car tells you what it needs if you stop trying to talk over it." The team sat in silence for a moment, absorbing the simplicity of it. What they had just witnessed wasn't mechanical genius, it was human harmony. Verstappen wasn't fighting the physics, he was conversing with it. He'd turned the car's instability into cooperation. The RB21, unpredictable for everyone else, had become an extension of him. Makis turned to the team. "There's your answer," he said. "It's not the floor. It's the driver. He's syncing with the air itself." As the meeting broke up, the data engineers began saving Verstappen's lap traces as reference files for future runs, the Mexico profile, they called it. For years, aerodynamicists had tried to quantify Verstappen's talent. In that moment, Makis understood they never would. "He's not just fast," he said quietly to his deputy. "He's fluent."